"You're smart, Mr. Miles," Richard Hale said, his smirk cold and deliberate. "But people like you need to know where you belong." The words landed like a verdict, smooth on the surface, poisonous underneath. Across the sleek glass desk, Jordan Miles kept his expression steady. The room reeked of power, chrome, confidence, and quiet prejudice dressed in a $1,000 suit. He'd spent years preparing for this moment. But one sentence shattered it all. What Hale didn't know was that the man he just dismissed would one day walk back into this same building, not for a job, but to buy the company itself. This is his story. If you've ever been underestimated or told you don't belong, tap like and subscribe, because in the next few minutes, you'll see how one man's quiet resilience will turn rejection into revelation and prove that true worth never needs permission. The lobby of Hale Tech Industries gleamed with glass, chrome, and cold perfection. Everything smelled like money. Polished marble floors, fresh espresso, a wall-sized aquarium humming softly. Behind the front desk, a receptionist looked up, gave him a once-over, then lowered her gaze back to her screen without a word. Jordan adjusted his jacket, clutching the folder in his hand. His resume, spotless. His references, solid. His experience, more than qualified. But as he looked around at the parade of suits that seemed cut from the same expensive cloth, something in his chest tightened. Still, he smiled when the assistant appeared. "Mr. Hale will see you now." The office was large, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline, sunlight bouncing off glass. Behind a desk that looked like it cost more than Jordan's car sat Richard Hale, the CEO. His silver hair was slicked back, his cufflinks glinting as he reached out a hand that felt more like a test than a greeting. "Jordan Miles," Hale said, sitting back in his chair. "Let's get right into it, shall we?" Jordan nodded. "Of course, sir." The first few questions were standard: background, education, work history. But Hale's tone shifted inch by inch, like a predator circling. "So," Hale said, flipping through the papers, "you're from Southbrook, right?" "Tough neighborhood. Must have been character building." Jordan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Yes, sir. It taught me resilience." Hale smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Resilience is good. But tell me, how do you think you'd fit in here? Most of our team comes from a certain background." Jordan hesitated. "If you mean professionalism and work ethic, I'd say I fit just fine." A faint chuckle came from the corner. Jenna Park, the HR director, sat silently with a clipboard in her lap. Her eyes flicked between them, uneasy. Hale leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "You've got confidence, I'll give you that. But culture's important here. We're a family. We like people who blend, who look the part." Jordan blinked slowly. "I didn't realize innovation had a dress code." The smile vanished. Hale's fingers drummed on the desk. "You seem like a smart man, Jordan. But this company represents excellence. Our clients expect a certain image, you understand?" Jordan did. He'd heard it before. Polished words for an ugly truth. He stayed silent. Hale closed the folder. "Tell you what. We'll keep your resume on file. But honestly, you just don't quite fit our culture." The words hit harder than he expected. All the late nights, the degrees, the interviews, dismissed in seconds. Jordan straightened his shoulders. "Thank you for your time." He stood, but Hale wasn't done. "One piece of advice," he said, smirking slightly. "Next time, try not to look so intense." confidence is fine, but you don't want to come off threatening." There it was, the knife under the smile. Jordan's jaw flexed, but he didn't react. "Understood, sir." He turned to leave. As he reached the door, Hale called out, voice almost casual. "You're smart, Mr. Miles. But people like you have to know where you belong, and this just isn't it." Jenna froze. Even she couldn't hide the flicker of discomfort that crossed her face. Jordan didn't turn around. He just paused, took a breath, and said quietly, "You're right. It isn't." Then he walked out, calm, composed, but with a storm brewing behind his steady eyes. The elevator doors closed, reflecting his face back at him. Tired, disappointed, but not broken. Not yet. Down in the lobby, the receptionist gave the same disinterested glance, but this time Jordan didn't even see her. His focus had narrowed. If you're still watching, you can feel that sting of being looked down on. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever been judged for where you came from. Because what happens next will show why patience is the loudest revenge. Outside, the city roared with traffic and life. Jordan loosened his tie and stepped into the sunlight. The sting of rejection burned in his chest, but beneath it, a spark. As he crossed the street, his phone buzzed. A message from his sister, Carla. "How'd it go?" He typed back. Didn't fit in, apparently. Then paused and added, "But I'll make sure I do next time, on my terms." He hit send. Above him, the Hale Tech Tower shimmered against the afternoon sky, tall, arrogant, untouchable. For now, the city air hit different after rejection. It wasn't colder, just heavier, like every sound, every passing car, every honking horn pressed a little harder on the space between Jordan's ribs. He walked aimlessly, briefcase in hand, his reflection ghosting across shop windows and bus stops. He could still hear Richard Hale's voice echoing in his head. "You have to know where you belong." He clenched his jaw. Belong. The word scraped against his pride like sandpaper. At the corner cafe, a group of businessmen laughed over lattes, their suits crisp, their confidence loud. Jordan glanced at them for half a second, the same kind of men who'd dismissed him minutes ago, then turned away. He kept walking until he reached a small apartment building tucked between two office towers. The elevator groaned on the way up, and when the doors opened, the scent of coffee and old carpet filled the hallway. Apartment 3B home. Carla was there, sitting on the couch with a stack of mail in her lap, and her hair tied up in a messy bun. When she saw his face, she didn't need to ask. "They didn't take you," she said softly. Jordan dropped his briefcase by the door, exhaling hard. "Didn't even finish the interview. I could see it the moment I walked in. I wasn't what they wanted." Carla's expression tightened. "What does that even mean?" "You've got the degree, the experience." He cut her off gently. "It means I don't look like their definition of success." Silence stretched. Only the hum of the fridge filled the room. Carla stood, crossing to him. "You're not going to let that man decide who you are, Jordan." He smiled faintly, tiredly. "Feels like he already did." "No," she said firmly. "He just told you who he is." He looked up at her. That quiet fire in her eyes had always been his anchor. Carla pressed on, voice softer now. "You've worked too hard to let some small-minded CEO define your worth. Remember what Dad used to say? When they close the door, build your own." Jordan chuckled under his breath. "Yeah, he said that a lot." "So maybe it's time to listen," she said. "You've got ideas, Jordan. Big ones. You've helped companies grow for years. Why not build something of your own? He stared at her, the thought stirring something dangerous, something alive. Start my own firm? Carla, I don't have the money for that. Then start with what you do have, she countered. You've got brains, you've got connections, you've got drive. That's worth more than their approval. Her words hung there, heavy but true. Jordan sank into the couch, elbows on his knees, eyes distant. He could still see the smug look on Hale's face, the certainty that men like him stayed on top forever. But what if that wasn't true? What if, one day, the tables turned? Carla watched him quietly. You're thinking about it, aren't you? He nodded slowly. I'm thinking, maybe he's right about one thing. Maybe I don't belong there. She raised an eyebrow. He looked up, his voice steady now. Because I'm not supposed to fit into their world. I'm supposed to build one where people like me don't have to beg for a seat. Carla smiled. Now that's the brother I know. The light through the blinds shifted, striping his face with gold. For the first time that day, the weight in his chest began to lift. He reached for his laptop, flipping it open. The glow of the screen reflected in his determined eyes. Let's see what it takes to start a consulting firm, he murmured. Carla grinned, settling beside him. That's more like it. Hours slipped by as they brainstormed. Business plans, potential clients, names. Every idea seemed too big, too bold. But Jordan kept typing. When the clock struck midnight, he sat back, stretching his stiff shoulders. Miles Consulting, he said quietly. Simple, strong, feels right. Carla nodded. You're going to make them regret ever underestimating you. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said it all. Outside the window, the city still pulsed with lights, the same skyline that had looked untouchable that morning. But now to Jordan, it looked different. It looked possible. He closed his laptop, stood, and turned toward the window. Next time I walk into that building, he said, his reflection catching the faint city glow, it won't be for a job. It'll be to buy the place. Carla laughed. Now that's the spirit. Jordan smiled. Small, certain, unbreakable. The sting of rejection was still there, but beneath it burned something stronger. Ambition? The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that waits, builds, and returns when no one expects it. The next morning came early. Too early. The alarm buzzed at 5 a.m., but Jordan was already awake, eyes open in the dark, replaying the night's resolve. He wasn't just chasing a job anymore. He was building something of his own. Are you enjoying this story? Don't forget to like and subscribe. The first few months were brutal. His office was a small corner of his apartment, a wobbly desk, a second-hand chair, a whiteboard filled with scribbles. Carla helped where she could, bringing him coffee and quiet encouragement when the money started running thin. There were nights when the fridge was half empty, and days when rejection emails piled higher than bills. But through it all, Jordan stayed moving. Every no was just fuel. He spent hours studying the market, cold calling potential clients, learning what the big firms ignored, small businesses, minority-owned startups, people shut out by the same system that once slammed a door in his face. And slowly, things began to turn. A local logistics company gave him a chance. Then another client came by word of mouth. Soon he was hiring a small team, 2 interns, and 1 assistant who believed in his vision. Miles Consulting was born. By the second year, his living room looked more like an office, laptops, folders, late-night pizza boxes. Success didn't come easy, but it came honest. Every win was earned, every deal signed through grit, not favors. Then one morning, while reviewing contracts, his phone buzzed. "Unknown number." He answered. "Jordan Miles speaking." A voice came through, steady, professional. "Mr. Miles, this is David Livingston, chairman of the board at Hailtech Industries." Jordan froze for half a beat. "Hailtech?" "Yes," the man continued. "We've been following your company's recent work. Impressive portfolio. We're facing some serious challenges and could use external consultants to restructure operations. Would you be available to meet?" Jordan leaned back slowly, the irony curling like smoke in his chest. Hailtech. The same company that had called him unfit, the same one whose CEO had told him he didn't belong. He smiled faintly. "Yes, Mr. Livingston. I think I can make time." 2 weeks later, Jordan stepped out of a black sedan in front of the Hailtech Tower. The building looked exactly the same. Towering, cold, gleaming with arrogance. But this time, something had changed. He wasn't walking in with a resume. He was walking in with power. Inside, the lobby buzzed with suits and polished shoes, but the energy was different. Heads turned when he walked past, not in dismissal, but in curiosity. His presence carried quiet authority, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. A young assistant greeted him nervously. "Mr. Miles, right this way. The board's waiting for you." As they entered the boardroom, conversation hushed. A long mahogany table stretched across the room, surrounded by executives. At the head sat Richard Hale, older now, but still carrying the same smug air. He didn't recognize Jordan. Not yet. David Livingston, the chairman, rose with a warm smile. "Gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Jordan Miles, founder of Miles Consulting. He's here to evaluate our company's restructuring proposal." Jordan nodded politely. "Pleasure to be here." The meeting began. Jordan presented slides, data, solutions, precise, articulate, unflinching. Every word, every statistic came from years of learning, failing, and rising again. He was no longer the applicant hoping to fit in. He was the authority in the room. Hale watched him closely, a faint frown forming. Something about the man's voice, the calm control, tugged at his memory. But he couldn't place it. When the presentation ended, the room erupted in quiet applause. Even Hale had to admit, begrudgingly, that this man knew his craft. "Excellent insight," Livingston said. "Frankly, I think Miles Consulting might be the key to saving Hailtech." Jordan smiled faintly. "We'll do our best, sir." Hale leaned forward. "Mr. Miles," he said slowly, eyes narrowing. "Have we met before?" Jordan met his gaze. Calm, steady. "Yes, sir," he said. "A few years ago, you were kind enough to interview me for an entry-level position." The room went still. A ripple of recognition flashed in Hale's face, followed by disbelief. "You," he muttered. Jordan's smile didn't waver. "Me." Hale looked around the table, his confidence cracking. "You're consulting us?" Livingston interjected, oblivious to the tension. "Not just consulting, Richard. Mr. Miles is our lead investor now. His firm recently acquired a major stake in Hailtech." Hale froze. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Jordan leaned back, folding his hands calmly on the table. "Looks like I finally fit in, sir." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Silence filled the boardroom, the kind that stretched and cracked like thin glass. The air seemed to stall between the two men. Richard Hale sat frozen, his face pale beneath the overhead lights. His silver cufflinks caught the reflection of the glass table, trembling faintly as his hand gripped the armrest. Jordan didn't move. He just watched. Calm. Collected. It wasn't revenge he felt. It was clarity. David Livingston, still standing near the head of the table, broke the silence first. "Is everything all right, Richard?" Hale blinked, snapping out of it. Yes, he muttered. "Just surprised." "Surprised?" Jordan echoed softly, his tone polite but deliberate. "I suppose I was too, back when you told me I didn't belong here." A ripple went through the room, faint gasps, shifting chairs. Jenna Park, sitting at the far end of the table, froze. She remembered. It had been years, but she remembered that interview. The quiet young man in the simple suit. The way Hale had dismissed him without hesitation. Her eyes widened slightly, a mixture of shock and guilt. Hale forced a stiff smile. "That was a long time ago, Mr. Miles." "Business is about evolution. People change." Jordan tilted his head. "Do they?" He leaned forward slightly, his voice calm, measured. "When you told me I didn't fit your culture, I believed you. So I built one of my own. One where merit mattered more than bias. One where people didn't have to look the part to play it." Livingston nodded approvingly, unaware of the personal history boiling beneath the surface. "Exactly why we wanted him here. His firm's model has revolutionized how we think about inclusivity and strategy. The compliment hit harder than any insult ever could. Jordan didn't even need to smile. The truth was doing the work for him. Hale cleared his throat, reaching for control. "Well," he said, chuckling dryly, "I suppose I should congratulate you. It's impressive what you've achieved." "Thank you," Jordan said simply. "But let's not dwell on the past," Hale added quickly, eager to shift focus. "We've got work to do, and I'm sure we'll—" Jordan interrupted, not loud, but firm. "Actually, the past is exactly what taught me how to handle the present." The room went quiet again. Hale looked up, and for the first time, the man who had once looked down on him saw something unfamiliar in Jordan's eyes. Authority. "I remember that day clearly," Jordan continued. "You told me I'd never fit in here. You told me people like me needed to know where we belong." Jenna looked down, uncomfortable. Jordan's tone softened, but the words still carried weight. "You were right about one thing, Richard. I didn't belong in your world back then, because I was meant to build one that made room for more than people who looked like you." Hale's lips tightened. His power, the unshakable air of superiority, had vanished. Now he looked like a man cornered by the consequences of his own arrogance. "Mr. Livingston," Jordan said, turning back to the chairman, "I appreciate the opportunity to help restructure this company. But if we're going to fix Hale Tech, we need to start at the top." A beat. Then he looked directly at Hale. "Complacency and discrimination are expensive habits, sir. They cost companies everything: reputation, talent, and eventually their future." Livingston studied the two men carefully, understanding dawning in his eyes. "I see," he said slowly. "Perhaps a leadership change is overdue." The statement landed like a verdict. Hale's eyes darted between them, panic flickering just beneath his composed facade. "You can't—" Jordan stood, cutting him off. "Don't worry, Richard. I'm not here to fire anyone. I'm here to build something better, even if that means starting from the ashes you left behind." He gathered his notes calmly, his voice steady as he added, "But this time, you won't decide who belongs. I will." With that, he turned and walked toward the door. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the room. Confident, rhythmic, final. Jenna rose slightly as he passed, her voice low but sincere. "Mr. Miles, I'm glad you came back." He paused for just a moment, meeting her eyes. "So am I." Then he left the boardroom, the same building that had once humiliated him, now walking out as its savior. The door closed behind him, sealing the moment like a chapter finally ending. Outside, the city skyline gleamed through the tall glass windows. Jordan paused in the hallway, taking a slow breath. He didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He just exhaled the weight he'd carried for years. Carla's words from years ago whispered in his mind. "When they close the door, build your own." He had. And now that door opened for him, on his terms. The city had grown quieter by evening, the skyline glowing gold against a sinking sun. Jordan stood by the tall windows of Hale Tech's executive floor, watching the reflection of the city that had once ignored him, now bowing beneath his success. He'd stayed late, finishing reports with his team before heading home. Most of the staff had already gone. The boardroom down the hall sat empty, its polished surface still echoing the chaos of earlier. That's when the door opened behind him. "Mr. Miles?" Jordan turned slowly. Richard Hale stood in the doorway, the arrogance gone from his face. The man looked smaller now, shoulders slouched, eyes hollow. The weight of his fall was heavy enough to bend his posture. "Evening," Jordan said, calm as ever. Hale hesitated, stepping inside. "Do you have a minute?" Jordan gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Go ahead." The older man sat carefully, adjusting his tie out of habit, though his confidence was nowhere to be found. "I just wanted to say," he cleared his throat, "you proved me wrong." Jordan said nothing. Hale continued, forcing a smile. "You were right. I judged you unfairly. Back then, I couldn't see past my own expectations. I suppose I thought I knew everything." "You did," Jordan said softly. "That was the problem." The silence that followed wasn't cruel. It was heavy with truth. "I built this company from nothing," Hale said, his voice low, "and I watched it slip away because I forgot what it was like to earn something instead of just own it." Jordan studied him, not with anger, but with something deeper. Pity. "It's not too late to remember." Hale exhaled slowly, his hands trembling slightly. "You don't have to do this, you know. You could replace me tomorrow." "I could," Jordan replied, "but that wouldn't teach anyone anything." He stepped closer, resting his palms on the edge of the desk. "You built a company that measured people by their suits, their accents, their last names. I'm going to build one that measures them by what they can do. That's how you rebuild trust, not with fear, but with fairness." Hale nodded faintly, eyes glistening under the dim light. "And what about me?" Jordan's tone softened. "You can choose what you do next, but whether you stay or walk away, your legacy's already changed." The words hit deeper than any punishment. Hale swallowed, then stood. He straightened his jacket, trying to salvage the last piece of his pride. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "you've built something remarkable." "I see that now." Jordan gave a small nod. "Took a long road to get here." Hale paused at the door. "You'll do great things, Jordan. I just wish I'd seen it sooner." "You should have," Jordan said, not bitterly, just honestly. The older man nodded once and left, the soft click of the door marking the end of an era. Jordan turned back to the window, his reflection merging with the city lights. The skyline stretched before him, the same city that had once made him feel small. Now he stood above it, not out of revenge, but redemption. He thought of Carla, of the nights they'd stayed up planning when there was nothing but hope. He thought of that day in Hale's office, the sting, the humiliation, the quiet promise he'd made to himself. He had kept it. His phone buzzed on the desk. A message from Carla lit the screen. "Proud of you, Jay. Told you one day they'd see who you really are." Jordan smiled faintly, typing back, "They did." Then he looked out once more at the city glowing beneath him. His voice was calm, quiet, meant only for himself. Respect isn't something you get for looking the part. It's something you earn by becoming the kind of person they can't ignore. The lights shimmered in his eyes, gold, steady, unbroken. Jordan Miles had walked into this world asking for a chance. Now he owned his seat at the table, and the table itself, and this time no one could tell him where he belonged. If you believe success hits hardest when it's silent, hit like, drop where you're watching from in the comments, and subscribe for more stories where the tables finally turn.